Self-Help Sat-Nav is brought to you by Open Forwards. Get the latest insights into stress, anxiety, depression, relationships, work, time out and getting stuff done by swooping over to www.openforwards.com. Hi, I'm Jim Lucas, your host of Self-Help Sat-Nav, the show where you can discover the stuff that really works. Welcome to episode number 4. Today, you and I are focusing on a real modern approach to well-being. And you can think of well-being as a combination of feeling good and coping well. And what I mean by feeling good is having regular experiences of positive emotions like curiosity, excitement, contentment. And then coping well is being able to function in different areas of your life, like your relationships and work and taking care of yourself. You can learn much more about well-being in detail through the 5 Daily Helpers course here on this website, www.openforwards.com. And this is a free 8-day course that gives you 5 simple actions you can focus on doing every day that's been shown to make a significant difference to your life. So back to today in this modern approach, which you can think of as modern in at least the Western world. When you look at it more broadly, it's been practiced in Eastern cultures for many hundreds of years. And you may have already guessed what it is that I'm referring to. It's something called mindfulness. And in particular today, I'm going to be looking at mindfulness apps. There are over 600 mindfulness apps available in app stores, and it's hardly surprising either. Mindfulness seems to have taken the world by storm. You see it in the media in various contexts, and as well as forming part of therapy, you see it in coaching, corporate training, night classes, schools, pain clinics, and palliative care. A few YouTubes and searches and you'll find various kind of references, even covering Google. And it's the new CBT, which has been the trend of self-help in the 1980s and 90s. CBT remains the gold standard though when it comes to treating health-related psychological problems. Now let's think a bit more about apps. I find apps fascinating. I think they're a great way to absorb information, tell you up-to-date things, and help you out. They also can be a great source of entertainment. And if you combine these things together, you have a system that helps you do stuff more efficiently and more effectively. And people are using apps on their smartphones and their tablets every day, of course. Over 76% of UK adults now have a smartphone. And collectively, UK consumers check their phones over 1 billion times a day. So mobile responsive applications or apps are an essential way of delivering services and products. They help you reach people in greater numbers and more regularly. Now let's think a little bit more about mindfulness. As a skill set, it's something you can learn, something you can practice, and then something you can routinely do. And mindfulness has some great data behind it. Now, I teach people mindfulness skills in therapy and also when I'm training professionals in acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a behaviorally focused cognitive behavioral therapy. So mindfulness is an intervention I'm very familiar with. And it works. I've seen it work countless times. And the evidence base has grown considerably in the last 10 years or so. A study back in 2010, which was a meta-analysis. Now, if you don't know much about research, meta-analysis is a study that looks at a number of other studies that have already been done in a particular area. And it it collectively brings together the results of those different studies to draw conclusions about just how effective it is. So this 2010 study looked at 40 other studies into mindfulness, and that included about 1,100 participants who'd applied mindfulness in their lives. And what this study showed is that mindfulness is rather effective in reducing stress, anxiety problems, and improving low mood problems. Now, like with all types of therapy or intervention, outcomes are far from perfect. And although mindfulness meditation practice is more effective than medication for mild and moderate depression, it's not a panacea. It's not guaranteed to cure all ills. And as far as I know, at this point in time, such a thing does not exist. But speaking personally, as a mental health professional, an experienced therapist, university lecturer, supervisor of trainees, and all-round consumer of scientific research, mindfulness is one of the best approaches around. It cuts to the chase. It deals with processes that people get stuck in all the time, and it's relatively straightforward to implement. So when I say that, I don't want to confuse that with saying that it's easy, because it isn't. Mindfulness invites you to experience whatever it is that shows up in the present moment. And that something or different thing can be painful, scary, unpleasant, shameful. But when you do it, it does help you to let go of struggling with those feelings. And what we know from science is that when you struggle with your own thoughts, your feelings, or the pain in your body, when you try to get rid of it, or fix it, or push it away, then you end up suffering even more. Now, I could go on for ages at this point about what mindfulness is, what it tries to do, how you learn it, but that will take us away from the main aim of this episode, which is really to kind of look at apps. And there are already numerous web pages devoted to the subject of mindfulness. You can even look it up right here on this website by going to openforwards.com/therapy and mindfulness. So as I said, the main aim here of this episode is to look at mindfulness apps so that you can go straight to the ones that have been shown to work. And I'm going to remind you and myself at this point of the 4 key yardsticks for judging the likely value of self-help. And this is something I covered back in episode number 1. So firstly, it needs to be evidence-based. It needs to have some data behind it that shows it's effective. Secondly, it needs to acknowledge that pain is part of life. Stay away from that stuff that promises eternal happiness. Thirdly, it needs to show you how to implement the lessons that you've been taught. And fourthly, it needs to acknowledge that people lapse and give up. But not only acknowledging it, but addressing how to deal with that, how to help people recover from that and get back on track. So another study that I've referred to and read over is something that took place back in 2015, so just last year. And this study looked at reviewing and evaluating mindfulness apps on the market. And the people that carried out this study did a search in the Apple and Google Play stores and came up with 600 unique mindfulness apps. Now, they did exclude the vast majority of them for the study because they consisted of things that were just reminders, timers, or mindfulness tracks. What they did is they only included apps that had mindfulness training as well as education. And they came up with a final list that included just 23 apps in the end. They used an interesting rating tool called the MARS, the M-A-R-S. And this tool assesses how well the app engages people, how well it functions, how aesthetic it is, and also how good a quality the information is within it. And it also looked at customer satisfaction. To get a really detailed breakdown of this study and its results, you can refer to the show notes at the bottom of this page. So the list included apps such as Mindfulness Trainer, Simply 8, Mindfulness Coach, and Take a Chill. But the top 3 apps in their study were Headspace, Smiling Mind, and iMindfulness. Mindfulness Daily had an equal overall rating score to iMindfulness in 3rd place, so it's only fair to give it a mention here, I think. Now, in my world, Headspace seems to be the most well known. I've personally used it, and it has many useful features. It also scored the highest in all the Mars related items. It has a timer, it has reminders, it has tracking, and it has a practice-based program. So you can easily tick off the implementation aspects of good self-help. It's also evidence-based, and the website does a good job of highlighting the science around what works. The founder and main personality behind Headspace is Andy Puddicombe, and he has a book out where he shares his story of experiencing tragedy and developing a meditative practice as a monk in a Buddhist community. There he describes happening on the realization that he could help many thousands of people by creating Headspace. And looking at its subscription numbers, is continuing to do a great job of giving people what they want. So coming in at 2nd place was Smiling Mind, and this is an Australian created app with that specifically targets different age groups. It's a not-for-profit organisation that aims to get mindfulness meditation on the Australian school curriculum by 2020. iMindfulness is a Danish creation that focuses on helping beginners and more experienced practitioners, and it has a number of additional in-app purchases as well for you so that you can dig deeper. Now, I've decided to refrain from endorsing one specific app above another here. I've spoken a little bit more about Headspace because it's one that I'm personally more familiar with. My advice to you, though, is to try out an app from the top 4 or 5 on the list and see which one suits you best. Try out the others on the list as well, because as we know, apps change and they develop. Some of them will improve and some will get better. Others won't, of course. 23 is quite a lot, I know, to kind of maybe experiment with, which obviously can take a lot of time. So to make life simple for yourself, you may want to just stick with the top 4 or 5. It's a study it's less than 12 months old, so probably not a lot has changed in that time. But if you're listening to this 1 or 2 years after the fact, then you may want to consider opening up to that larger list, as well as looking at other apps that may be new on the market that haven't yet been studied. And I do want to suggest you look at the Calms app as well, because I've heard from several people who use it who said they like it. I think it was excluded from the study last year because it doesn't include educational elements separate from the meditations. But if you already know enough about it, then you may want to take a butcher's at Calms app as well. Now, I agree with the rating tool that a self-help mindfulness-focused app needs to have a combination of good design, good functionality, helpful engagement, and quality information. Self-help is an educative process and an interactive experience. I've seen several digital products over the years that have had some strengths in these areas and also some big limitations in others. Some have had great content, but have lacked good design to make it easy to follow. Others have been very functional, but lack engagement support. Educative and training tools need to think about instructional design and how to help people get the most out of what they're offering. They need to help people digest information and develop skills. You need to help people take small steps, progressing through and developing as they go. And a mindfulness app that thinks about this and is built around these concepts will be much more successful than one that throws everything at you in one go. We all need structure to help us learn. There's a reason when you do a degree or a postgraduate course that your coursework is spread out across the year. There's a reason you take lessons over time, and there's a reason you have tutorial support. The structure and the design helps you get more out of the course, and it gives you a better chance of success. So what are the next steps here for you? If you're struggling with a busy mind, or if you suffer with anxiety, stress, depression, or if you want to change your lifestyle with losing weight or getting healthier, then I'd encourage you to explore mindfulness practice. And you can start by trying out some of the apps mentioned in this episode. Or if you want to do a bit more research first, then get onto Google. There are a few ambassadors of mindfulness around. Ruby Wax is one of them, and I've really come to appreciate and like Ruby Wax. I love her openness, and I love her humility, and I love that she brings humour to the discussion of mental health, which I think makes it easier for us to have conversations about what helps and what doesn't. It allows us to reflect more deeply and to express opinions that drive creativity rather than encourage stigmatization. And of course, YouTube is a great resource for many things. And you need to be careful, of course. Like many things, once something becomes popular, then a bandwagon attracts opportunists who want to make a quick buck. And I think what these opportunists lack is the training and experience of what mindfulness really is. They've watered it down and they've overstated what it's capable of doing. Arguably, they've tried to exploit people rather than aim to help them in any meaningful way. So stick to the institutions, the organisations, the apps, the websites and the courses that have credibility. And you can judge this by looking at a person's training. Look for the expertise and look for the proof. So if you have any questions about today's episodes, please leave a comment by going to www.openforwards.com/series/Self-Help Sat-Nav. And if you like what you've heard, please leave us a review on iTunes, as it really helps us to reach so many more people. Thanks for tuning in, and listen out for the 5th of the month for the next episode.